It's a me, Eli Sliwa. This is my interview with Bernard Frazer from the Ottawa band Church of Trees. Make sure you go show him and his band some love on their socials. Make sure you listen to their music also. Thanks. So, Bernard, how did your musical journey begin?
Oh, listening to pop radio in the 60s, which was much different than radio today. Today, there's very sort of pigeonholed stations. You either have country, pop, or oldies and country. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Whereas pop radio in the 60s was a melange of everything. You would have R&B next to country, next to rock and roll. I mean, you name it. And it was wonderful because it exposed you to virtually everything that was going on musically that was worth listening to.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I have to say that radio has had a lot of influence on my musical taste as well. But you're completely right. It has changed from what it once was. It was like this titan of media. And now it's just sort of like really like, I think niche would be the right word.
For sure. Now, I'm speaking, of course, strictly of commercial radio, not campus radio. Campus radio is a whole other ball game, and thank God for campus radio. So, yeah.
I completely agree with that. So how did the pandemic affect you and your band? Were you forced to find more creative ways to express your music?
Sure. I mean, the recording process didn't really change much, save for, I do most of the recording at my home studio. And then we go into Jordan Zadarozny's studio, Skylark Park, to do vocals. So we recorded a couple of albums over that period of time, and we had to sort of pick and choose when we could go in because at certain periods there were lockdowns in place, and we didn't want to, be putting anybody's health in jeopardy. So we were observing that. So that made it a little sticky, but it certainly forced us to consider other ways of getting the music out there, such as video and live performance and that sort of thing, because you couldn't go and play it bar robo or live on Elgin, right? Because they were closed.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it sounds like you persevered through the thick of it there. So that's really great to hear. So where would you say you draw the greatest musical inspiration from? Is it a particular artist or a genre?
Well, and because I was brought up with all kinds of different music, I draw from a very disparate well of music. As certainly David Bowie is, one of the big ones for me. I draw a lot from early 80s synth pop. But really anything and everything. I listened, Johnny Cash influences some of the things I do, believe it or not, even though, a lot of what we do is primarily synth pop. But no, I really draw from a disparate well of music for sure.
Well, that's good. It's good to have multiple sources of inspiration. That way you don't have a harder time running out of ideas,
Mm-hmm.
So how would you describe your fans of Church of Trees?
Well, I couldn't really create a single profile because they come from all different backgrounds, and we're seeing a younger audience these days, which is very cool. I think in the beginning it was primarily people who had a love for synth pop of the 80s, or the new romantic movement, if you will. But I think it's grown over time. We played recently we opened for Carol Pope and Rough Trade.
Very cool.
In Ottawa. And the audience, and it was packed house, and the audience was just a huge range of ages and demographics. So I wouldn't be able to paint sort of a single picture.
Yeah, but I can definitely draw the connection there between all your different musical inspirations, and it sounds like a wide range of demographics who are your fans too. So it's cool to see the correlation there. So
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at your Bandcamp, and I noticed all the very different album and EP covers there. I'm wondering who designs them, because they're very vivid and they're very they stood out to me.
My wife and I.
Oh, very cool.
We come up with a concept usually based on an image we might have seen, or just the latest one, Pish Posh, which is right there,
Right on.
is a photograph that was taken by a lovely friend of mine from the UK by the name of Tom Wilcox. Tom is he's a curator of all different kinds of music, and he brings a lot of the David Bowie alumni to Britain and and Europe, and sets up their tours and that sort of thing. But he's also an amazing photographer, and he posted this photograph online one day, and I reached out to him behind the scenes and said, Tom, would you mind if we used it, because it speaks, speaks volumes in terms of who we are and the image that we're trying to portray? And he said, absolutely. So it's based on whatever my wife and I are looking at the time, or whatever sort of concept we might have for the feel of the album.
Is your wife in a band too, or
no?
No, she's a visual artist, so I can definitely respect that. And it's great that she has that involvement in your musical career like that. I think that's really sweet to hear.
We were always looking for some way to sort of connect creatively, and when I started Church of Trees about 5-6 years ago, it was obvious that this was the first and foremost, a way for us to connect was to use visual medium to extend our vision.
Absolutely. So speaking of your band name there, how did you come up with the name Church of Trees?
I live out in the boonies, in the Ottawa Valley, and we have 10 acres of property, and that leads on to thousands of acres of pristine forest. And I'm not a particularly religious guy. I'm not a religious guy at all, actually, but I'm a very spiritual person. But my spirituality comes from nature. So when I look out my window here in my little studio, I look at my Church of Trees.
Yeah, that's very cool. I have to say I relate with that too, because we're obviously working with a greater force in life, but that's not really decided who that greater force is. So I like that. And nature is very powerful and inspirational too. And we're born in nature, and we should spend as much time as we can in it. I truly believe that. So you mentioned Elgin, I know, but what is your favorite venue you've ever performed at, and why is it?
Well, I have a soft spot for the Gladstone, because that was one of the first places we played. We opened for the Peptides there. And of course the Bronson Center, because it was such a memorable night playing with Carol and Rough Trade. But I don't know if there's any one sort of place that's stands out more than the others, except for the ones I've mentioned in terms of the connection, what was happening. But we would love to play other venues and get a sense of what other concert venues can sort of bring to our sound, because when you go and you play a venue, it has its own sort of set of foibles of audio foibles, and you can come up with different sounds depending on that venue. So yeah, we'd love to play more.
Do you have a dream venue you want to play at?
Massey Hall.
Oh,
for sure.
Right on. So who is your dream musician to work with? Do you have one?
Well, I mean, I've worked with a couple already. Rob Pruce, we've worked with Rob Pruce on and off for the last 5-6 years. And Rob, of course, is formerly of the Spoons and Honeymoon Suite. And he's a music director on Broadway, and he's helping Carol Pope with her musical right now. And he's a dream to work with because he's got so many wonderful ideas, and he's such a great keyboard player. And he's a great producer in his own right as well. Worked with Carol Pope, and that was a dream come true, because I'd been following Carol, quite honestly, since the late 70s. I was a fan of hers when I first saw Rough Trade perform back in 77, 78 at a university, and have been in love with them ever since. So to be able to play with her and record with her was a dream come true. But I mean, yeah, Bowie, Eno, Robert Fripp, Steve Reich, Philip Glass, all of the great, more sort of avant-garde performers from the 70s and 80s.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you've worked with people you want to work with, and that's a lot to say. Like some bands I know definitely don't have that. So it's very cool that you've achieved your dreams in some way of the sense for sure.
Oh, I'm very fortunate for sure.
Yeah. Now I'm tread lightly on this next question because it can kind of be like asking an artist who like their favorite child is. But do you have a favorite song you've recorded?
Oh boy, a favorite song. I mean, there are songs that are meaningful to me for certain reasons. Off our new album, Oxygen is really near and dear to my heart because I wrote it for my wife as a sort of love letter to my wife. Songs that Dee Dee Butters, I worked with Dee Dee Butters of the Peptides several times, and she has performed with us of late as well. And I love what she did with my song Heaven's Waiting back on The Dark and the Light from the second album. Her voice sends shivers up my spine. I mean, she has such a gorgeous voice and such a huge range and such personality that when people are able to take your song and do something special like that with it, it just, I mean, it's really memorable for me. So I guess those are a couple, but there are lots of others. I mean, every song holds meaning for me for certain reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to thank you so much for your time today, Bernard. It's been great getting to know you in Church of Trees. But before we go, I was wondering, is there anything you'd like to plug?
Well, we're hoping we're going to play live more this year. We're hoping to get to Toronto. I'd like to play Ottawa again. We're hoping to get out west. We're working on a couple of videos, and I'm also working on a sort of a secret project, doing some well-known covers, 80s covers with some people. So we're hoping to release that in the coming months.
Well, very cool. Well, thank you very much, Bernard.
Thanks so much, Eli.
Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you tune in to my show on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Bird on a Wire, only on CKCU 93.1 FM.